Thank you, Krupa, once again. And we now have Shreedevi from Poduval. Mehak will share a few words about it.
So I'm sure you've got a lot of lessons and takeaway from Krupa Ma'am's journey. And another mesmerizing story how and learning all the different faculties in the first 2 years, be it human development, textiles, or nutrition and community resource management, helps us further in life. So we have a Shreedevi Poduval who owns a business called Shree's Quilt Decor. And over to you, Shreedevi.
Hello. Hello. It was wonderful listening to her, and she has such immense background in textiles. Mine is totally diverse, totally into human development. But believe me, whichever field you come from, wherever you are what you want to become and what you see yourself to be. In college, I was, I think, more on the NCC ground than in college because I had heard my mom was in, it used to be called ACC in those days, so she was an ACC cadet, and I had always wanted to march on Rajpath. That was my dream that I'd seen. I enrolled, I think it took me 1 year to find out because we don't have NCC in our college, so it took me 1 year to find out, and in 12th standard, I go and join NCC. Something which most people will tell you, no, you need to study. I had a lot of support at home, but we came from a very middle class family, and I think I never really knew that because our parents provided and we would go ahead and do what we wanted. But yes, like most middle class homes, we need to get permission. There was limited pocket money, there was a pass that we got, but I think I lived my life to the fullest. Because at no point was I a person who saw what I didn't have, but learned to live with what I had. And I remember my dad saying that when I said I wanted to join home science, which was again my mom's dream, that she wanted to go. She lived in a place called Palga, and she always wanted to study in Coimbatore. But it was a big decision in those days because you had to go and live in the hostel, and it was unheard of by families in those days. So there was an uncle who said if it was my daughter, I wouldn't have sent, and that was the end of education in home science. And my mom was very talented. She, in this small little town called Palka, she would, she learned embroidery. She did the entire course of singer. She was very, very fortunate to have a very good teacher with her. And she would tell for each yarn that had to be bought, it had to come from Madurai, which was much further down. So those were the days, and my mom would do anything and everything. That was the kind of person that she was, and she lived life to the fullest and kept everybody around her happy. I joined NCC and things just unrolled. I went for one of my camps, and when I ran over there, they selected me for the next year's Republic Day camp. Okay, and I had to go through the entire training. For me in NCC, the biggest disadvantage was my height because I was 5'2.5", and I remember that half very well because at every inch made a matter. Because they would line us all up, and you were 5'6" and above, you immediately, they would consider you for other things, but because this was the height, you just came this side. And then they said, okay, best cadet, go back there. Okay, so this went on for a while, but I just continued, and I remember in one of those camps, fainting. And my mom was very worried, because she said if she fainted and she went to Delhi, and the doctor was the doctor came from very old school, said, why do you want to do home science? There's so many better courses that you do, why did you go and join home science? And the same way she said, if you're going to run and faint and something happened to your brain, and you'll be marred for life. So that was the kind of doctor whom I had, but a person I trusted who became my mother figure later. However, when you don't get something and you want it very badly, that's the time you value it most. And I had decided, come what may, I wanted to go march on Rajput. I was selected as the best cadet of Maharashtra. I was All India second. And you know, when you get success, to everyone, All India second is big thing. But at that time, I lived with the thing that I didn't come first. That's the human mind. And that's the women that we kind of build. And I told you I was selected for running. And ironically, for a long time, I kept this a secret. Even today, somebody, when I entered college, said, I remember you on the sports field. But when I ran in Delhi, I ran and I had severe cramps on my legs. Okay, and much later I got to know that was because of dehydration. We were in Delhi, it was very cold, we were not drinking enough water. So 1 month in Delhi, I had cramps and I didn't make it. You know, I think I missed my best cadet because of that. But somewhere I had developed this demon in my head. And demons are created by us in our mind. It doesn't come from outside. Nobody told me. Everybody appreciated. But what was it that I lived in my mind? I didn't come first. So I came back, and it became a very unconscious thought. But those were the days we all admired Kiran Bedi, and we all wanted to become IPS officers like her. And I met Kiran Bedi at Delhi. So it was all the more that I really wanted to do it. So I came back and I decided I wanted to take up human development. And I thought that was the closest to go towards the UPSC course. In Bombay, however, we don't have people readily available to tell you how to go ahead for the state government jobs. And when I went for a youth exchange program, I was a young ambassador, went off for a year. And when we came back, obviously we are talking about the home science course the first year. Okay, so you are not in college. I remember my name used to be there in the defaulter list. I think that was the first time, 90% no attendance. Okay, because we were on the NCC field. But the thing is, if you go there, it's your responsibility to make it up. And I would do it. I think I had fabulous support by friends. In those days, we couldn't afford Xerox machines, so they kept carbon paper and made notes for us. And then we went research because I needed my own notes. I could never mug up from another person's note. I need to understand that, and then only I could achieve. So I think a lot of tips that you get actually from that in-class information I had missed out. So I knew that very clearly nutrition was not for me because I didn't know half the basics of nutrition because I wasn't in class. Okay, and therefore I took a very safe path. All my practicals were in only the vegetarian one because if I take non-vegetarian, we didn't cook non-veg at home. So how would I manage? So I knew what I didn't want to do, and I knew that I wanted to do IPS. That year, okay, I enrolled after my BSc, I enrolled for my MSc first year, and that was the year they had opened out seats for ladies in the army. Okay, and that it was really my desire to be there, to go to Chennai, to the OTA and give that interview. However, that didn't happen. God had something else in load for me. I said, if I finish 1 year, just finish that second year. And then I know what I need to do, right? Common sense, no? Why would you want to leave something? And which I told I came from a very middle class family. So that each penny we knew that made a difference. As it is, I'd gone for youth exchange 1 year, and because of that, my father had retired and I was continuing post retirement, continuing my education. So I think I was very fortunate again. I completed my MSc and I immediately joined Prakriti Women's Center. And my director, on the first day, Mrs. Amin told me just one thing. There's no structure here. There's no task here. We need to evolve what is happening. They were going to make the Bal Vikas film series and it was to become, so I had to do the research for it, work with the team. We were going to be working with a whole group of people filming, an entire film team. It was the first time college had done something like that. We did that, so it was 3 years I think the whole thing went. I was very lucky to have worked with Dr. Rani Ravate simultaneously. She had just come back from the US and she had started practice in our college in the counseling unit, and I would assist her with the group counseling and dynamics. So I saw counseling right there and I knew this is a calling that I wanted to achieve. And then I enrolled at Xavier's Institute of Education. So I worked in college the whole day, sat for 2 hours because the class started at 6 o'clock and 6 to 8. I would attend the course and there was just one rule at home. You have to come home what time. It is no staying out of the house. That was the rule. Whether girls or boys, for all of us the rules were the same. So that's how I got into that. And life had a very different turn. Completed my masters. I knew that I wanted my PhD, but I also knew I had to get married. Things were not working out. Finally, I decided, okay, I'm getting married. I got married. The person, he said, he wait for me till I finish my PhD. I said, the person who's going to wait for me, I can do my PhD anytime. And that's how I completed my masters, worked, got married. But when it came to my own children, I said, I'm a counselor telling people how to look after their kids. I can't leave them there. And then I decided, no, I'm going to take a break. After that, what happened? Because there was no going back. But I worked with IIT, Indian Association for Preschool Education, where we did a lot of voluntary work. We were setting what was called the right practices in education. So I think that was a very nice team, a very niche team, and a lot of learning that happened. But I learned each day how to create a structure when there was no structure, and how to be responsible and be how to stay accountable for the job that's been assigned to you. Okay? And that's how my journey in education went. My kids grew up, and then I went back to a school. I was called in well, knowing that I was a counseling psychologist. It was an inclusive school with very progressive ideas by home science students from SNDT. So it was just all that I wanted to be in. And I always said, I wish I'd reached there earlier, but I think God has its time whenever. So I joined in the counseling department. I realized it was an inclusive school. They needed a remedial department. Set that up for them. And I said, no, I'm not doing it sitting behind. I want to go into the classroom so that we can try and decrease the number of people who are being labeled wrongly. And that was the time that I headed the English private program. I realized for doing that I need to do my BA. Because I didn't want to be called the untrained. Okay, after doing your LSC, you don't want to be untrained. And I think that's another thing that Nirnani Kirtan really puts you to. And believe me, when ma'am says, you can identify an enhanced student anywhere. Because the passion for their work, in any organization, they really stand apart. So, there was a group of people, we did a lot. I was so busy with my life, I almost reached a very near stage when I had thyroid cancer. Luckily, it was only the gland that got removed, and they said you need to be careful throughout. We take life so much for granted, and we become superwomen. We think we can multitask, we can do everything, and everything should be perfect in all ends. I think all of us as women, that's how we are. See, there's always a plus and a negative for your kind of attitude. And my mother-in-law had Parkinson's. I had a very supportive father-in-law. He said, go and work. My husband would ask me, haven't you had enough? Abhi bachcho ko dekh lo. My son was in 10th, and that was when he said, no, you need to pay attention to the family. And the biggest thing was because for me, my heart ached when I had to keep food on the table and tell my father I had to eat it alone. So that was a decision that I made. And I said, okay, I'm taking a sabbatical, I'm taking a break from my work. So because my life was children and the classroom. So living without was something I just couldn't fathom. And that was the time that I decided, okay, let me do all the things that I've always wanted to do in life. I was 48. So I said, let me just, do all the things. I loved gardening. Okay, I learned how to, do organic gardening was the whole focus that I kept on. And I got back to running. And that's when I realized the demon that was there in my mind. I had only built it in my mind. It was nobody else's creation. It was my own. For 30 years, I'd held it. 30 years. And believe me, when I say it's not just running, but these are the demons we build about everything in our life. And then I started seeing a pattern. When there's something that was difficult, I would just go back and take something something which was not as, something that I wouldn't be a failure. Most of us do it. It happens very unconsciously. That's the time, and then because of Pinkathon and running with Pinkathon, I became Pinkathon ambassador, and I ran Mumbai to Pune, a 3-day run. Okay, 100 kilometers, but then it started in my way. And that's my turning point in 2017, because I was not selected in that first team, and my ego was too big to go and beg for a place in the main team. But I knew that I'm going to run. I said, I don't have another year. I had a father-in-law who was ailing. I had children who were, crux of joining their careers. So I could wait one more year and pray. We would start, there were days we ran 65 kilometers. So it was not about speed, but we had to train our body. Anyone can do it if you follow a regular practice. So we got the training program, but what we had to do was ourselves. So 9 women. The youngest was 38. She had malaria and therefore she could not join the team, but she had done very well to qualify into the team. And the eldest was 70 years old. Okay? And that day I learned age is just a number. Because at 48, what had I told myself? My life is done. Okay, and now there's a friend of mine who was with business motoring and says, you're so good with writing. Why don't you join us? I said, but I can't work on Saturday, Sunday when my family is on Saturday, Sunday at home. And I said, no, now all my dreams of writing books, my children, my students would write. It's not me. And that's what most of us Indian women do. Isn't it true? We do that sometimes today, we do it sometimes with many. You may see this mindset with your parents, with your mom, with your granny. Okay? And they're all super talented. So when, after running this 100-mile run, my sister, Devi, who's she said, why don't you try making quilts? She had been to the US, she had seen the entire thing of quilting. And she said, why don't I knew nothing about it. 30 years I had not picked up my machine. I was so lazy. Even if a dress is torn, I wouldn't stitch it. My mom, when she would be visiting, she'd stitch that for me. Okay, because I didn't connect with that cause. And then, once I decided that this is the line I want to go, I had wonderful friends. That it was around the same time there was a ban on plastic bags. So I made bags with whatever. Now the material I used, different as compared to Kripa, is material that was lying around the house. So that may be used or unused. Or good material, maybe it's torn on a particular place or stained on a different place, but the material was really good quality. It was good cotton. Okay? So that was the kind of material, and I decided I'm going to get into quilting. I took the plunge. I had friends who would support me, who would, buy from me, because it was almost 3 years that I left my job. All that I didn't mean to earn. Okay, I got married to a person who could really look after me and live very well. But I always felt that's not mine. What I need to do, I was too independent to go down. Rather, I think that mindset I changed just last year, and I worked a lot to change that. Because that was something that always came in between our relationship. There are reasons why you develop that mindset or whatever. It's not him. It's about certain incidences that happen in life, and I had ingrained this. And I think that affected our relationship the most. So I had an old treadle machine that I bought from my neighbor. Treadle machine is the black machine that we had. So the embroidery machines, automatic machines were just coming into the market. And I knew I needed to upgrade, because when you're making bags and you're making them out of jeans and you're making them out of canvas, when the handle and the bag needs to go in together, 6 layers of fabric. So I think every month I call the mechanic to set my machine in order. Okay, I looked at what machine could withstand a whole lot of things. And I was so obsessed with getting it right, that I never saw what were the other things. So all the facilities of my machine I never saw. And I always yearned for more. Right? So in 2019, January, in Chennai, we had the first India International Film Festival. Okay, and that was a total game changer. It made me realize quilting is much more than a baby quilt, much more than a comforter. It's much more, it's not something that old ladies do, because that's the mindset many people have, or the poor women do for making a godri. Okay, there is an entire artistic element in it. And the home science students in me knew I needed to master that. Because challenges is something that we all love, and winning in those challenges is something that we all love to do. You can see that Shivaji coordination quilt is just a part. Shruti Dandekar had made it. She spent 11 months. It's actually much bigger. It's got the entire Shivaji coordination thing. And she had used a whole lot of small, minute pieces of fabric. It's a raw edge applique, but she had developed a new technique. There were many more quilters like this who had international standing. Quilters come from different fields. They come from fabric designing, they come from home science, they come from any or every field. Okay, anybody who loves sewing is what they would do. Next slide, please. And here I realized I needed to do more. Around this time, I lost father-in-law. And that entire thing, there was so much of grief because he was with us almost 12 years. My mother had Parkinson's, and I told you he was my biggest support. And that's what most of us as women are going to face. We have certain dreams and certain other things come up. My sister-in-law was visiting, wanted to take back some of the shirts. And being a quilter, I heard about memory quilts. So I said, I've never made it, but let me try some. And the small piece you see below, the white one, that was the memory quilt that I made for my father-in-law's shirts. The piece on top is made out of my father-in-law's dhoti and lungis. The three pieces on this side was another commission that I got from a friend, cousin of mine, who used her mother-in-law's sarees, okay, to make memory quilts for her siblings. So people started appreciating what had to happen. I decided what I had in hand, let me use. But my yearning always to have that long arm machine so that the process becomes faster, always remained. Next slide, please. Around this time, I was a runner, and Sharmila Munch, who is a tiger's mom, she had created this group in order to support other entrepreneurs who are into entrepreneurial ventures and didn't know how to go about the whole thing. So they asked me, they had seen in Mumbai Pinkathon, they had seen an entire quilt that was made out of jute and out of fabrics. And she said, can you do that for us? Can you make a quilt out of fabric for us? And I said, yeah, I'll do that. I had not seen the logo. I had not seen anything. But I had already committed and they had a lot of hopes on me. And here came that logo of that quilt. I was shocked. I remember twice going to the printer's shop because you first needed that entire piece. I went twice to the Xerox center and I was going to tell them, no, don't, I can't do this. I'm going back. Because every inch of piece, luckily it was black and white, I just collected all the black and white material in my house and we tried to see what could match. So I said, let me start with a simpler thing. Let me figure how I do the raw edge applique and make those alphabets and the lettering. So everything was pieced one by one. The layering done behind and quilting done over it. It's not just applique, it goes much more in the field of quilting. And that's how this came. It took 3 weeks. I slept roughly an hour a week. In between that, there was a trip to Delhi that I had to go to. I came back, but I was obsessed because I had to deliver. We had the night run at 9 o'clock at night in Colaba, and I finished the work by 6 o'clock. The finishing touch was done. I took it. I handed it over. So that's the photograph. But the next day when I went to collect my bid was when I actually saw that. And this entire experience taught me one thing. When a senior, a mentor, sees a potential in you, they know that you have it. Because that's what they can see. Sometimes we don't acknowledge it ourselves. You need to just break those boundaries and not give up. You need to just keep persisting, keep doing it, and new zones. I am not a great quilter, I'm a very amateur quilter. People are there in the field of quilting for about 20, 30 years. Another lesson I learned, each day, if you say this is my hobby and my passion, I need to spend at least half an hour in order to become an expert in that field. Next. By the time I realized, everything in the quilting industry, when you're using quilting cotton, it's costlier. If you needed the machine, it was costlier. So I said, let me do with whatever I have. I remember my mother making godavis, but she didn't do the entire quilting. I've seen her doing machine embroidery on a very basic treadle machine. So I said, let's start experimenting with my hand. And that's when I realized my love for big stitch quilting. Big stitch quilting is the use of godri thread. And it is a practice which is used in the Asian side. And then I got together a group of women who lived, very close in a body near my house. And I said, you all come over and, we'll eat something and let's do something together. I said, we'll make bags out of those. Those cloth bags was needed, so let's do something different. Everyone came, saw, watched, and went back. Because all of them, the group of women that I was looking at, were people who were skilled, but had a lot of responsibilities back home. I had this plan perfect in my mind. They come to me for 2 weeks, I'll train them, then they can take the work home and do it. Okay, once I'm sure that they can do it independently, then do. But we didn't have that time. So a big dream, the first roadblock, it didn't go ahead. Now I knew this is a dream I am not giving up. And that's the time a friend of mine contacted me and said that there was this Bachat group in Nehru. I live in Chennai. So they said there's a Bachchandra group in Naval and they need training because they make bags. The wages they were getting were just 2 rupees per bag. And I think the idealist in me just flared up. I said, how can people take others for granted? I said, whatever skills I have, whatever I know, I train them, and we'll develop a market for, and we'll get the things going. There was the Rotary who had a Roto-Free exhibition, and we taught them a whole lot of bags, and we put up an exhibition. It was very well received. And my calculation in my mind was to make a quilt will take me at least 3 to 4 weeks minimum. Okay, that block quilt would take 3 to 4 weeks. If I work on it every day for at least 2 hours. If we get a group of women, 12 to 13, each makes a block and puts it together, the whole process just passes. Isn't it? Basic maths and logic. And we decided, now we're going to go. These ladies were a group. They lived just 400 meters from that place, but they had never gone out of that body or that quarry. Okay, that's the level of women who are there all around, who need our help. But they wanted to do something. And when we all set the big goals and big dreams, came 2020 positive. You know what I mean? March 8th was the exhibition, March 19th was the lockdown. I lived in Chembur. I knew I wanted to help those women. I couldn't take the car and go out. And sometimes when one door closes, we say another door opens, right? We got involved in our community, in our society, and we said, why wait for masks to come from outside? Masks were needed for medical workers, and let's make masks in-house. So there were a group of ladies, my mother, there was another aunt, she's an architect, there was another auntie. We had a group of about 8 people in our colony, and about 2 friends who were outside. So we went on to online teaching. I said, I'll teach you how it has to be made, I'll cut it and give it to you, all get to make. And we made about 1,000 masks. But there's no point holding on to this mask with us, right? It has to reach people, it had to reach. So our society, everybody got masks, free of cost. And believe me, when you do things with a good intention, things come true. We started getting fabric pouring in. The shop which had elastics opened the shop just for us back door so that we could get the material in order to make. And by then we decided there were a lot of people helping these migrant workers from one place to another. They needed to be kept safe with masks. In all, in that period of about 3 months, we made 2,500 masks. A big number for us because none of us had handled, none of us had a textile background. None of us had seen numbers like that. We were not tailors. We had a home to manage and everything else to be done all alone and manage all this. But that was the dream, and I think those 3 ladies found a purpose. There was another group that I discovered, and I say touching lives. What happened is, as you grow older, there are things you can do and things that you cannot do. My mother suddenly had found her purpose to support and work and connect with people. And that's another dream that I have, that we need to do something for the people who are skilled but cannot do it individually, then we can work as a group. And around the same time, I turned 50 and I decided the gift for myself is I want to register. I want to register as a propriety. I want to register as an MSME because that was important to me. It was a dream that was too close. I was searching for an identity and my identity was Shree Spilsky. Against all odds from everyone in the family, my husband said, okay, fine, you can register, but no GST. And by then Amazon went on and they said, okay, you need GST. Only then you can sell. Even if you make, how do you sell? So I knew nothing about business. My field is social work. And when you come from social work education, your mindset is very different. It's a giving them. If people give me money, give. They didn't give it. But you know that you cannot connect. And I joined in with mentors because that was the time a lot of online learning platforms began. So I just found somebody in the line of textiles and I just clung there. But I took one lesson back that day because they were talking about large numbers. I had not reached that manufacturing level. And they said, you cannot feed others until you have your own bread. I repeat, you cannot feed others until you have your own bread. Which means that you cannot help other people until you have that income, right? That's one of the mistakes many social workers do. We teach them skills, we teach them to become independent, but we don't have a market available for them. And when we say it's a business, you need to do all of them. The girl in the center, she worked with me for 3 months. Her name is Varsha. But in that 3 months, we knew that we had touched her life because she was living in a home where the husband wouldn't go to work. He had a job. He wouldn't go to work. Because he didn't go to work, he didn't have an income coming home. And she stood up and she said, I'm going back to the village with my kids and I'm going to go back and join college. So I think that was a victory for us. When we talk about sari quilts, we think of Godri. The green quilt that you can see over there is made out of a sari. One 6-yard sari becomes the top, one 6-yard sari becomes the back, and there is the backing that is put in the center. Now this technique helped those who wanted to make sari quilts, okay, and wanted a machine-made kind of an option. You can make them in silk, you can make them in cotton, you can make them in nylon, because it's a long arm machine or a bigger machine that is then handling the entire process. I managed to just find a person in the team. Orders were rolling in, you can't do everything. Because the same burnout that I was facing in school is what I started facing now here. And that's when I decided I'm going to now do things a little differently and start building on my team. We had 2 girls with us. We would outsource work whenever needed. I also learned in business the 80-20 rule. 80% of your work is what's going to generate your money. And 20% is smaller things, okay, it's because of the volume that you generate the money. So my social work and my entire entrepreneurship worship had to become that 20%. But then I wanted to train women to move from that 20% to the 80%. And that's what I have in another person. The quiz below, can you just back 1 minute? As a group again, we had done, there was a challenge called the Abundance Challenge. And that quilt below was my own design. Because I'm also part of the modern quilt guild. We have Mumbai Desi Quilters and the India International Modern Quilt Guild. Because these 2 groups, I think I was able to grow by leaps and bounds. But I also realized I needed to take time for building my skills, building my business, and also relaxing and having time for my family. That quilt is on exhibition in South Africa today because all the quilts are in display. As a group, it's a group. Alright, what are we missing today? The human touch. The competition I faced in the market was when I go to buy a quilt, there are quilts available for even as little as 300 rupees. There are quilts available for even 1,000 rupees. And me as a quilter, when I'm going to look at good material, when I'm going to look at the process being right, we can never compete with it. Until the day I told myself, that's a different market and what I'm looking at as a different market. Okay, that's the call you need to take. When I started taking on more orders came in for memory quilts. I'll explain what's a memory quilt. A memory quilt is made out of the gum. So if it's a child, it doesn't have to be someone who's passed away, it can be a child in the house. A mother wants to keep those memories of the first year of the child or the school years of child close to her heart. So she makes it into a quilt which can be used by the child or based on the design whether it could be used as a display piece. It can be made into pillows, it can be made into bags, it can be made into any form. But what it does is bring warmth and comfort into the child's life. But bigger than that, what we are missing today is the top. Because we go to the market and buy a quilt or a blanket, there is no piece of the family in it. Those who belong to Maharashtrian households, and if you had a Godri, which is called the Ajinsi Godri, okay, most of you heard of it? You see that little dress, a piece of your grandmom's sari in it, and there are so many stories that come out of it. That is missing. The top, the connect, that's what we're missing today. So, I've had a whole lot of ladies, we need to tweak our product based on the customer's need. Okay, as a quilter, it's not what I want to make and give, it's what the customer needs. That's the difference between a hobby mindset to a business mindset. You can see that in that corner there is a little quilt which is used for petrol as well as its kanta work. Okay, so there was this grandmother who's a Bengali who wanted to send a quilt for their child in US. But the child said, no, I want a paw petrol one. So we merged both those ideas and then she was able to send a grandma's quilt for her. The one on the extreme right are all from children's clothes. But again, you'll see different patterns, different designs. The center quilt there was a memory quilt made for a father. He was a doctor. And that's why you'll see that little stethoscope in it. But because of his illness, he moved into stockroom because he was very unwell. And so we decided why not come up with both that combination and customize it for the children. So she made two quilts, this is one of them. And both were two different designs. Alright, so customization is my way to touch lives. And I think there, the things that I did in counseling, the things that I did in remediation, that really came to my rescue. The piece over there is a little yoga mat, but I personally feel you cannot have yoga mats in fabric because if a person slips, you will slip and fall into her. So this was, I think it will become more of a display piece, but designed by a friend, for a friend who was an instructor with certain messages that he wanted put for her. I think that today adorns her yoga room. The piece on top, the red piece, is a dress made by an aunt for her nephew. And this was out of the child's dresses. But they didn't have too many dresses, and because the child was about 6 years old, she wanted to add in characters like the cow, and he was very fond of animals. The cow, the donkey, the horse, all of that was added by aptly using the child's clothes itself. The right quilt is a total quilt that came from the customer to me. She had said that I want a quilt where you just give me blocks like that, and I'll take it and we'll write messages for the child's naming ceremony. And then she took it back, and then they got it written in permanent ink, and that came back. The piece on the right, the mother had kept 6 years of handkerchiefs with her. She had handkerchiefs given out when the child was born, and they had written messages. It was her dream to make that into a reality. And using that as well as the child's clothes. She was an interior decorator, so she had this idea in her mind long ahead. And finally, after 6 years, her husband said, now this is ultimate, you can't occupy so much space in the wardrobe. Either you chuck it or get it made, and that's when she had come to me. The piece below was a sister who sent out 6 by 8, 6-inch pieces of material to all her friends all over the world. And said it was a baby shower of the new mom, and write messages for the child, and that was what was sent. And then we had to put that all together. So those are some of those quilts with customization makes it personalized. Last year, there were a lot of people who said, we want to learn this. We want to learn it as a hobby. We want to learn it. And I started reaching out. There was a friend circle, and there were a couple of people who connected with me online. And out of this group, there are 2 ladies who have connected. The person on your right who made that bag, okay, she takes orders, which she also sends to the US and UK. But she connected with my helper here, who then does work for her at home. So it's a win-win for both. She has the ideas, but the other person has the skill. And that's the kind of partnership that we saw emerging. The student on that side, this side, okay. She was a design student, and she, when you do product design, there's a lot of things that you're involved. And she said, I want to learn to stitch. She didn't know to sit on the machine. And believe me, in a day, you can learn to stitch the industrial machine. It's not so difficult. So with all these processes, we started off. And I think what happened is I touched the lives of so many people. People who want to give personalized gifts and therefore want to learn how to make a quilt, want to convert something. And this was the time I fell and had an injury. I had a shoulder injury, and 2 years I could not stitch. It's very recently that I started stitching again. But that when your drive and your passion is very high, you will keep going, come what may. Next one. When I think about from where to where I've gone, I often wonder how from home science to human development to education. My education in English, teaching children how to write, helped me when I started putting up my Instagram pages. Because when I made those posts, I didn't have a problem to write. I could speak, I could write. That happened very easily. Till one day I discovered something about fidget quills. My mother-in-law had Parkinson's, and we used to try and give her different activities for her to do things at home so that the residual skills, the motor skills that are there, the residual cognitive skills have to be kept alive. So this was the time, and my experience with ADHD children and ADD children. ADHD is hyperactive children, ADD is the other end of the spectrum. Both need very different kind of input. And that is why when you personalize, customize for individual needs, you can't just create and put it out in the market. I had a NIFT student, I had NIFT interns with me. This was during the lockdown, and these were some of the projects that we made. And I missed the Naniketan students so much because the NIFT student would only give the design, she didn't know how to implement it. But NIFT students, come what may, if you know we have to do it, we'll do it anyway, and we learn how to do it. And so these were certain, the extreme, the brown thing, with those 6 little patches, that's a bag. Very often you would have seen elders in your family as they grow old, they get what's called restless hands. They need to keep doing something. And it becomes very embarrassing for the family members. So a bag like this that can open up and inside has a mat can be taken with them wherever they go. We modify the product, we create experiences that is needed for that person and give them a product that makes them healthy and fit for life. That's what a fidget quilt, sensory quilt. Quilt you can make with different sensory surfaces by simple patchwork, and the child who has these, as a teacher in class, I've seen some children who needed to fiddle with their bags and don't disturb the rest of the class. You have a bag like this and they are kept happy and not disturbing, and they are, because their physical need is then met, they are able to then pay attention to the teacher in class. So I'd like to end with one thing. To be able to touch life and touch a life that you don't even know is an extraordinary thing. Cherish every memory, love every moment, and embrace every possibility. I want to add one last word. I always lived my life with the motto, in giving we receive. When I said that we are actually, developing those bonds with people, believe me, as at each time when I gave, I received much more from them. So that's what sometimes we don't realize. Each time I have grown as an individual, and I think there's so much more for me to do in life. Thank you.